So I don't really talk about Andrew Tate too much on my channel because one, I can't stand him. Two, he's a biracial that uses the hard ER at the end. I don't have any respect for him, but he comes from the manosphere and he's known for telling men what to do and how women should act and all this other BS, right? But as you guys may or may not know, in 2022, he was hit with that whole case in Romania, which is still going on, by the way. But he's trying to dispel all that and say, this is all a hoax. They're trying to get him. And so with Piers Morgan, he interviews him because recently, I don't know if you guys know, but in the UK, they were going to bring criminal charges to him from some civil suits. Well, the Crown prosecution decided, okay, we're not going to go ahead and give criminal charges. We're just going to let these civil cases play out. But now Andrew Tate is going along claiming victory and saying that everything else is going to be thrown out. So let's go ahead and call the BS, because I think Piers Morgan, he sniffs out the BS, but he doesn't exactly say Andrew Tate is lying. But let's go ahead and review this together. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let's get to it, y'all. All right, you guys, without further ado, let's get to it. Here we go.
Tell me what it is that you've been addressed with today in relation to these specific charges.
Yeah, for anyone who's not been following, I can make it very simple. I became the most Googled man in the world, and I was saying things they didn't like, and all of a sudden, every single country I'd ever stepped foot in started attacking me with all these strange legal cases from decades ago. And the process is the punishment. You and I have been speaking for a long time. We're old friends. And every time we speak, there seems to be some new case against me, and you quite rightly say, we'll wait to see what happens in court. And here we are 4 or 5 years later, and they all fall by the wayside. So every single member of parliament, Vice News, BBC, every single person who said they've spoken to my victims has spoken to one of these girls. And the CPS has just said that these girls don't even have enough evidence to allow me to be charged, proving that they were lying all along. We know that people lie, both men and women, especially when there's a financial incentive. So this is just one step closer to my complete exoneration, sir.
Okay, but as I understand it, and correct me if your understanding is different to this, as I understand it, this is one case involving 4 women who are concurrently running a high court civil case against you. So they will have their case in a civil case, but it won't be criminal now. But that doesn't impact the other constabulary, which brought 21 charges against you and your brother Tristan earlier this year, right? That's still ongoing and still separate to this.
Romania.
That's correct. So these 4 girls, they did a crowdfund and they begged the world for money. And they spoke to loads of MPs and Vice News, etc. And it turns out they have no evidence at all. They begged the world for money, and now they're suing me for money. They're desperate for money. And then they went to the police, and the police said they have no evidence. So that's all gone. The reason that the case against me here with these 4 girls was thrown out is because I know who the 4 girls are. So I simply just sent the text messages. Remember, I've been investigated. I haven't resisted any investigations. I'm one of the most investigated men on the planet. I'm more innocent than probably everyone else in that studio because I've been investigated head to toe. I have cooperated with the police. I provided proof. I provided text message conversations that these girls are lying, and the case was thrown out. The other case you're describing with the 21 charges from forever ago.
No. See, this is how he's lying. The case has not been thrown out. They just didn't bring criminal charges against him, but that doesn't negate that the civil case is still going on. The civil case is still very active, you guys. That's the thing. He's trying to give you this word salad to confuse you.
The CPS won't tell me who the girls are because they know if they tell me who the girls are, then I will prove that the girls are lying before they can charge, remand, drag me through a trial. So their intention is to not tell me who they are, which is incredible to me. That they're saying, you're charged and you need to go to jail. We want to remand you. Here's an extradition warrant, but we won't tell you who the people are. So I can't possibly defend myself because that's a setup. That's a matrix attack. But once I find out who they are, that case will once again be dismissed, just like this one was.
Okay.
And
no, I'm going to make the point. I just want to be clear to viewers who are trying to follow all this because it's complicated.
Yeah.
That there
it's
is
complicated, and I hate to interrupt you, sir, because I want you to talk. The only reason it's complicated is because they're trying very hard to drag up imaginary cases from the sky, and they keep collapsing. It'd be very simple if I'd done something wrong.
Well, it is
if you do something wrong, you go to jail.
No, but I think it's important to use the correct language about what has happened here. It is a significant development. Clearly, the case that was brought against you by Hertfordshire police involving these 4 women, they have said they couldn't find evidence that met the bar for a criminal prosecution against you. It doesn't mean they can't continue these 4 women to continue the civil case against you. And it has no bearing as we sit here.
And let's be honest, most of these cases against these people are usually civil. they're looking for some kind of payment or something like that, because more than likely the statutes of limitations are gone. They're done with, right? So the only thing is to charge you civilly.
On the separate case brought against you by Bedfordshire Police, which the CPS announced separately in May, where it authorised 21 charges against you and Tristan, which included 10 against you relating to 3 alleged victims, including rape, actual bodily harm, human trafficking, and controlling prostitution for gain. Tristan faces 11 charges connected to 1 alleged victim, including rape, actual bodily harm, and human trafficking. So that is ongoing. Nothing that's happened today has any bearing on that prosecution by Bedfordshire Police. That's correct.
That's correct. And the reason that's ongoing, unlike the other one from Hertfordshire Police, is because they won't tell me who these victims are. And they won't, because they know I'll get it thrown out in a week. I'll just say, well, here's the text messages proving they're lying. That's the end of the case, just like happened with the Bedfordshire one. So, correct. These girls can still sue me civilly. I can sue you civilly for having a terrible shirt, sir. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, they're desperate for money. I'm a very famous, very rich, very handsome, very charismatic, very well-known, very tall, very...
And this is where the confusion comes in. And this is why I wanted to do a review on this, because the case in Romania is not a civil case. The case in Romania is criminal. That one is not to be disputed. The case in London or in the UK, that's the civil case that they are looking to see if they can file criminal charges. And then they said that it doesn't meet the requirements, basically. So again, he's confusing you with both. So then you think like, oh, well, you know, if there's civil cases, why are they doing it? It's to confuse you. That's why.
Very sexy individual, and lots of people want my money, and that's fine. They're going to lose in civil case too, because they know they've done nothing wrong, and the CPS has already said I've done nothing wrong twice now. So it is what it is. It's just, you know, it's quite interesting, Piers. If I was truly guilty of crimes, imagine how frustrating it would be to watch me for 4 years never go to jail. I mean, it's obvious to the whole world now that the process is the punishment for me, that I've never done anything wrong. Everyone knows I've done nothing wrong. The whole purpose of this is just to drag me to court, slander me in the media, make me spend money on lawyers, tie me up in litigation, restrict my movements. And that's all they're trying to do. The process itself is the punishment. They know I've done nothing wrong from the beginning. And you have sons too. And I like to believe that if your son was accused by all these different states from all around the world of all these heinous acts for 4 years, and he had to suffer jail and house arrest and lose all his money and have his name slandered, 4 years later, when all the cases started falling by the wayside, because the Los Angeles case has also fallen apart and collapsed, you yourself as a father would be standing there saying, this is incredible, this is insane, that we have an innocent man here who's just endlessly attacked.
Well, look, as I said to you repeatedly, I don't know whether you're guilty or not. I follow the process. I'm a journalist. I don't look upon it as a father or someone that knows you or any of these things. To me, the fair and proper way is called due process. And my only concern with you is, have you been afforded due process? What is interesting to me is the length of time this is all taking. That doesn't seem to me to be normal. You do hear stories like it.
You know, I think one of the things too is that, again, a lot of the cases are civil. And so with that, a lot of them get pushed back. And then also you have to think too, with this being international, that takes another step of cases being delayed as well too. Now, I don't know about the case in LA, but I do know about a situation in Florida where that was thrown out. But again, civil cases is one thing, but the case in Romania, that is criminal.
But it seems to me out of the norm. And it's certainly significant today that the criminal prosecution against you by one of these 2 British police constabularies has now been dropped, leaving a civil case there. That is clearly not an irrelevant fact as you and I debate this whole scenario surrounding you. But my question with the Bedfordshire Police, from a legal perspective, are they obliged to tell you who the accusers are?
Well, that's what's so interesting. So you made a fantastic point there about this taking so long. The reason it's taking so long is because these cases are imaginary and they're stretching to the very, very limits of the law to try and pin something on my name. If I had done something wrong, it wouldn't be taking so long. So it's pretty obvious to anyone with a brain now that this is all a setup from the state. As for Bedfordshire, they are legally obliged to tell me who the victims are, the supposed alleged victims, but they only have to do that once I have been remanded. And if I go to the UK, I'll be remanded after this extradition warrant is executed. But that can't be executed currently because the Romanian state has a case against me for tax evasion, which will take at least 10 to 11 years. So this is something that's going to take 10 or 11 more years to eventually be satisfied. It's pretty ridiculous all in all. The whole thing is asinine and I've done nothing wrong. And it's just crazy that the process itself is the punishment. We're going through all this garbage for so many years. And I like to think, and I respect your point of view. You made a very great point. You're a journalist. You follow the updates. Completely correct. That's a very professional way to handle it. But I think also we're human. And from a humanistic perspective, anybody with a functioning mind can look at what's happened to me across these last 4 years and come to the conclusion they were out to get me. They don't have much. They're desperate to try and pin something on me, and they can't seem to make it stick. And that's why it's taking so long. Nothing's really happening. A lot of these cases are
But here's the thing. What makes them want to get Andrew Tate out of all people? This kind of makes me think about the Charlie Kirk situation. Who is he for people to want to get him? But more or less, who's Andrew Tate for people to want to get him? I feel that as far as the manosphere, red pill, that's pretty much dead. Can we be honest about that? Like, since Kevin Samuels, there's people still trying to clamor on to that certain section of the internet, but that's gone. Like, you look at people like Fresh and Fit, like, they struggling, y'all. They are really struggling out here. Like, that kind of niche that Andrew Tate was known for, it's not relevant. It's not.
Falling by the wayside. If I was truly guilty of anything, considering how much they don't like me, I think we both agree I'd be in jail.
The case that you mentioned in Romania, which has to be resolved in totality before you can be extradited back to the UK to face these charges from Bedfordshire police. My understanding is that that whole case is ongoing. It's not just relating to tax issues, but the whole case involving the human trafficking, rape allegations, and so on, that is still unresolved. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. So what happened there is in December of last year, the entire case under the Biden admin was thrown back to prosecutors for irregular evidence, basically corruption. The entire case file was littered with corruption. They had lied and made multiple mistakes. They had made false translations. They had made false documents for false girls who didn't exist. They lied from head to toe. It's the kind of thing that a prosecutor would go to jail for in a serious country. But of course, we're in Romania. And even the Romanian court threw the entire file back and said there's irregularities in evidence. Basically, it was all corrupt. And the entire file was thrown back to the prosecutor. And the prosecutor was told he has to fix this file. Here we stand nearly 11 months later. The file is just sitting on his desk. He hasn't fixed anything. He hasn't changed anything. And the reason for that is because how can you fix things you've made up? You can't. So
again, I'm glad I get to call out the lies because the charges are still remaining. Now, the part about Biden, I think that's trying to speak to right wingers and Republicans, all like, yeah, the Biden administration, but the Biden administration had nothing to do with it. Andrew Tate had a tweet years ago where he said, like, oh, this was an attack on the USAID or USA to try to get them to put me in jail. Biden had nothing to do with this at all. And it's funny because remember when the travel ban, Trump got the travel ban from Romania for them to release that? Well, when he came over to Florida, that's when Ron DeSantis, a Republican, was all like, oh yeah, we looking into Andrew Tate. So still, we don't even know the conclusion from all that either. So again, it's your own people who's doing it to you. It's not no Biden or anything, but of course he can throw out that red meat and y'all be like, yeah, the Biden administration tried to, just like they do with Jeffrey Epstein, even though he was in jail during the Trump administration, but y'all think it was the Biden administration, right? And I just want to say they had upgraded the charges in 2024, right? So they expanded the charges. That's why Piers Morgan said 21 charges, because they're including trafficking of minors, sexual intercourse with a minor, and money laundering. Now, the thing is that shout out to, I believe his name is Milk Bar TV on Twitter or X. You look at his Twitter and he actually shows that there's a video with Andrew Tate with a 15-year-old. And, you know, it's not explicit, but it's a sort of fetish thing that is very weird. And so he had this young girlfriend who's on camera and he's doing things, and she's a part of this case in Romania as well, too. This is what people forget about. Like, that whole situation is caught on camera. Am I saying that he's R. Kelly? Yes, practically. I just want to remind y'all, like, this case in Romania involves a whole minor and everything like that. It's not just some random women. Now, what happened was that one of the girls said that he stole her passport and everything, and her family back in the States were trying to help her out. And so basically she was able to go to the US embassy and tell them, like, hey, he stole my passport. Now, anytime you take somebody's ID or their passport, that counts as trafficking because you're holding them against their will. So this is how it actually kicked off. And then they found more victims, and then they got his brother. So this is why they spent 3 months in jail. Let's continue.
He's
right, but
stuck
what
with
is
this
important?
file.
Right, but this is why the language around this is important, because there are people already, I see it all over social media, who are seizing this development today, which is a not insignificant development. That's why I wanted to talk to you. But they're seizing on it to say Andrew Tate's been cleared of all wrongdoing. And they're saying he was cleared of all wrongdoing in Romania, but that's not actually technically correct as we sit here.
Well, technically, yes, it is actually. The case was sent to court. The indictment was put together and sent to court. It went to the preliminary chamber, which is the Romanian version of checking if there's even a case to go to trial. And it was rejected by the preliminary chamber for irregularities in the evidence, saying that this is a falsified case. This is a political case where you've just lied about evidence, prosecutors. Give me something real. That's what the judge said. It's gone back to his desk for 11 months. And what's happened to it since, I'm not sure.
Right, but it's now, so my point being, it's unresolved. And that is the reason. Well, hang on. And that's why you've not been extradited back to the UK to face the other charges. I mean, that's from a legal.
So I just looked it up, like why it's been delayed. It says procedural delays. The legal proceedings have been delayed by challenges from the defense. In December 2024, an appeals court sent the June 2023 indictment back to the prosecutors due to legal and procedural irregularities requiring it to be revised. Ongoing investigation. The case remains open and is still under criminal investigation by Romanian authorities. The Tate brothers were arrested again in March 2024 based on the UK issued warrant, but a Romanian court ruled that they could only be extradited to the UK. And this is what he was talking about when the case was going to be, has to be finished in Romania before they extradited. But again, like, it's not that, oh, they're throwing this out because of this and that. Well, the defense is arguing, and so they're trying to get that finished and regulated, and then they'll proceed with caution. But it has not been thrown out as he's trying to put it.
Perspective, that is where you are, right?
By Romanian law, when the case is rejected in the preliminary chamber, it goes back on the prosecutor's desk, and it can remain there for up to 10 years to basically be tried again at his discretion. So I understand he's going to try again at some point, perhaps with some of the financial crime. As we all know, I have lots and lots of money. I'm very, very rich. So the Romanians seem to be unhappy about parts of that. So perhaps he's going to send it back without the human trafficking and just the tax, or maybe he'll leave a bit of the human trafficking in there. I'm not sure what he's going to eventually send it back with. But when he does send it back, that means it's 10 years before the British state can even attempt to extradite me. So I'll have to just drive around Transylvania in my supercars for 10 years while dealing with the Romanian court system.
Well, I mean, that does seem to be a preposterous situation. If indeed they did decide to string this out for many more years, which of course, you know, look, like I said to you, I don't know about your guilt or otherwise. I simply follow the news as it develops. But certainly, if you're one of the women that are still awaiting the prosecution for the Bedfordshire charges, the idea that they would, just in terms of due process for them, the idea that their allegations would not be tested in court until potentially 10 years have elapsed on the Romania case, I mean, I'm sure you would agree that isn't due process. That isn't fair on them either.
Well, I would agree that this whole thing from the beginning has been a farce. I would agree that, yes, the prosecutor now has a choice. He can either throw the entire file out and I get extradited to the UK, but then the Romanian state owes me a whole bunch of money for false imprisonment. So they can't do that. So they have to send something to court, of course. And that's going to take 10 years. So this whole thing from the beginning has been a farce. The whole thing's been a setup from the beginning. The process is the punishment from the beginning. I've never done anything wrong from the beginning. And when we first met, when you were here and we were discussing Israel, Gaza, and all those things, all of our discussions were around this Romania case, which was thrown out.
There's nothing that says that the case has been A, thrown out, or two, that there, or B, I should say, they're going to take 10 years for anything to finally go to trial. Like, nothing says that at all.
After our meeting. And now we have this new British case, which popped up after our meeting. And one of them already got thrown out already. And then there's another one, which they're trying to extradite me on, but they won't tell me who the victims are. I mean, Piers, if they said to your son 20 years ago, he hurt a girl, but we won't tell you who, where, when, we won't tell you anything. We'll just say 20 years ago, you hurt a girl, and we won't give you any details. Of course, you're going to sit there and go, well, this sounds made up. I don't even know where this is supposed to have happened. I don't even know the person's name. This is obviously a farce. The whole thing's been a farce from the beginning. And just so you understand, the primary objective of all of this is twofold. One is to stop me voluntarily going to England because they know I'm a political force and they know I'll overthrow Labour. And secondly, the main reason is so that every time my name is said, people talk about the allegations against me as opposed to my ideas. They don't want anyone to talk about my fantastic ideas or my fantastic influence. They want people to talk about the allegations against me, which is why they try and keep these allegations open and going on for so long. There is no due process, Piers, because there is no guilt. There isn't even any victims in law of this.
Well, we don't. Well, the reality is we don't know that yet. And in relation to your ideas, as you heard from me to your face in our last
And regarding the Jane Does and stuff like that, eventually the defense, they do know who the Jane Does are. Like they are aware of who they are. Now, there are cases where they do conceal Jane Does as far as like, say, if it's a minor or something like that, or in extreme cases, the fear of some kind of retaliation. But typically, you know who the Jane Does are. Like you're always aware of what you're going to be charged with and what the prosecution is going to try to nail you with. You always know.
Interview, which got pretty passionate, as it often does. I don't share some of your ideas. I think some of them are reprehensible. But it is a fact, as I say to people, that when I walk around, I'd say 1 in 5 young men who come up to me want to talk about you. And you know what they ask me? Is he guilty? And I don't know. But I do know they're going to see headlines like today, and they're going to see it immediately spun incorrectly by a lot of people on both sides, people that hate you and people that love you, and they're going to spin it to suit their agenda. And that is why it's really important to me as a journalist to keep to the facts as we know them. So the question about Romania, if they decide to make a final decision about you, say for argument's sake, they drop the charges against you tomorrow, you would then be presumably immediately extradited to the UK. Is that your understanding?
I don't think it would work immediately. They would have to file to drop the charges, and they would have to justify to drop the charges, and they'd have to explain why they put me through all of these things while they don't have a case. And then Cheto would come involved because the European court would have to get involved for why I was falsely imprisoned, and I was locked up for 3 years, and they'd owe me about $100 million in lost income. And then there'd be a whole case around that. All my judicial processes would have to finish in Romania before I could be extradited. So either way, it's a minimum of 10 years.
Is your instinct that you don't know who's brought these allegations to Bedfordshire?
So while this is playing, I was trying to look up to see if any article stated that they have dropped charges or is going to take them up to 10 years. Nothing says that. I've been looking. Nothing says that it's been dropped or is going to take up to 10 years for them to prosecute this case. Nothing says that at all.
Police in these 21 charges. But we know it's 3 women in your case, 1 in Tristan's case. Is it your belief that all of those women are more likely than not to have worked for you and Tristan?
Absolutely not. I know every girl who worked for me, and they all contacted me and defended me. Every single girl who's ever worked for me has defended me. What happened is when the Romanian case started to fall apart after we were let out of jail, and the British Foreign Office, who wrote to the Romanians and said, destroy these guys, the Romanians said there's nothing to destroy them with. Then the National Crime Agency launched something called Operation Moonwalk, and they called 2,000 women who had ever known me, my gardener's daughter, my neighbors who I used to live next to, 2,000 women. And amongst those 2,000, they managed to find 3 girls who, of course, are lying for financial gain. And they've come up with this entire bogus case. And I've said, okay, who are the girls? And they're saying, we're not telling you. We're not going to tell you when. We're not going to tell you where. We're not going to tell you who. We're just going to say you've done bad things 15 years ago. And it's a whole big farce from the beginning. If you call 2,000 women who a man has ever known throughout his entire life, of course you can find 3 liars. Considering that 20% of people are on antidepressants and 10% of people have mental health issues, I'm surprised they only found 3 of the 2,000. But it's a whole farce from the beginning. It's never going to stand up in court. It's not fair. And if they did the same thing to your sons, called 2,000 women they'd ever interacted with, they'd find 3 girls to lie too. That's just human nature. So the whole thing's been a setup from the beginning.
The interesting thing is that he's trying to say, oh, this is some BS or whatever. Then if it's BS, why did they expand the charges? Because originally the whole minor stuff, that was not on there. That was then updated in August of 2024 again. Why would they expand it just to later on be like, all right, we're dropping it? That makes no sense at all.
None of it's ever been fair. None of it's ever been fair.
Your UK solicitor, Andrew Ford, welcomed today's decision and said, despite much external pressure, the evidence speaks for itself in this case, and the Crown Prosecution Service have rightly confirmed the evidence is inadequate to provide any realistic prospect of conviction. The reason the CPS made this decision will become obvious when the evidence is played out during these civil proceedings. So, I mean, what is he suggesting there? What do you believe is going to come out of the civil case, which is going to make this decision by the CPS obvious?
Well, I have an upcoming civil case, so I have to be careful what I say. But in a hypothetical scenario, if girls are going to accuse a man of rape or sexual assault, and then continue to see him for years afterwards, and continue to text him, and continue to buy him birthday presents, and continue to beg to want to be with him, and continue to call his phone and sit outside his house when he doesn't reply to them, and then start asking him for money and getting very angry when they don't get money, I think it's pretty clear to see the motivations behind a false criminal accusation. I don't think anybody with a functioning mind, is going to be confused about why this is happening. And the Bedfordshire case is garbage too. All of this is garbage. Piers, I understand you're a journalist. I understand you have to be very careful what you say. However, you are a father to sons, and it's very unfair that we live in a world now where any man can just be unfairly attacked, unfairly lied about, and they have to suffer the process of this entire insanity for years before eventually it turns out the girls lied. Because what happens to those liars?
Well, look, I think it's very unfair. I think it's very unfair if anyone doesn't get due process, whether that's a male who's been accused of things, a woman who's making the allegations. The legal system should work properly, and there are far too many examples where.
And listen, if those civil cases are BS, then definitely I'm on Andrew Tate's side. Like, those are BS. But again, we can't take every scenario and apply this to the main situation in Romania. We can't do that. Civil cases is one thing. When you're in a criminal case, that's a whole nother thing. And again, the UK probably found out that, hey, this might be some kind of domestic dispute. We're not going to touch this. And so that's why the UK left it alone. But again, that doesn't mean that necessarily he's innocent. It just wasn't enough evidence for them to charge him with anything.
Or it doesn't work properly. I don't know in your case, like I keep saying, I have no idea how this is all going to finally unravel. All we do know as a fact today is that so far you have not been convicted of any crimes. That is the only fact that we know for sure.
Yeah, and that's a very important fact, because if we keep in mind I was enemy number one of the system, I was the most Googled man on the planet, that federal agencies from 3 different countries, America, UK, Germany, Poland, Romania, 5 different countries have investigated me, that I've handed over all of my electronics. If I had done anything, if I had smoked weed, if I had taken steroids, if I had gone to an orgy, if I had had a homosexual experience, if I had done anything, all of these things would be all over the paper. And what do they have on me? Nothing. I'm cleaner than 99% of the people you walk past in the mall. Because if anyone else had their lives investigated to the level mine's been, you'd see a whole bunch of skeletons in their closet. I haven't done anything. I raise my children. I work hard. I train hard. I don't do drugs. I don't drink. I haven't done anything. And they're very disappointed by how clean my life is. And that's the truth, because they have been desperate to put me in a cell, desperate. And they've given the NCA, Operation Moonwalk, Britain, as broke as it is, dedicated hundreds of thousands of pounds to trying to put me in jail, as if they don't have other things to pay for, as the streets of London run with blood. They have tried so hard and they are failing. I am an innocent man. It is not that hard to put a guilty man in jail.
Final question. You've talked before about having a relationship of kind with some of the Trump family. Have you heard from any of them recently?
No, I think they've got much bigger concerns than my cases. I don't think they're very interested in any of my cases. I've always been a Trump fan. I think he's the best choice for America. I think he's doing a fantastic thing. But
listen, when they did do something and get that travel ban lifted for you, they got a lot of backlash for that. So they ain't trying to touch that shit. That's basically what it is. They ain't trying to touch it. Now, there is another part where they have a panelist on discussing the Andrew Tate situation, but I'll let you guys go ahead and check out that. Or let me know if you want me to go ahead and do a review on that. But anyway, you guys, I just wanted to bring this because, again, Andrew Tate, he does a lot of word salad and trying to spin things to make it look a certain way. And I just wanted to give you guys, okay, this is what's actually going on. Nothing has been dropped. The charges was actually expanded on August 2024. Again, the case in the UK, though, that's civil. They were looking to turn it criminal, but they did not turn it criminal. They're just going to leave it as is. And all his other cases, hey, I can't speak to that. But the only thing I know is that in Romania, they're not playing with that one. I would definitely be careful. And like I said, Milk Bar TV on X. Look him up and you guys will see exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to Andrew Tate. I love y'all. Thank y'all for watching. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you like more videos like this. Deuces, everybody.